Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Borderlands 3 video. Today, I'm going to be giving you guys my first reactions to the Guardian takedown. I'm going to be going over some tips and tricks, like with the crystals and some of the immunity phases and mechanics of the new raid. And overall, I just want to tell you guys what I think about it, because obviously I watch the community and I kind of know everybody's first reaction to it. So I want to talk about it a little bit. Now, basically first, we are going to go over some of the tips and tricks. I know a lot of you are confused about the crystals and your insta-death and stuff like that. So yeah, let's get into it. Now, real quick, the first thing I want to say before we go over anything is to really give this raid some time. A lot of people are complaining about the raid and some of the mechanics and some of the bullet sponginess, and you know, that's all good and fine. But I just want to point out, when the Maliwan takedown first came out, it took me 3 days to beat it solo. My first Wotan kill solo was 23 minutes long. The video is on my channel. You can go and watch it. It was a 23-minute Wotan kill. Now we are speedrunning the Maliwan takedown in 5 minutes. We're getting 30-second Wotan kills. Like, we're doing crazy things now. So I really just want to urge you guys to just give this raid a chance. I guarantee a month from now, when we fully understand all the mechanics, when we find some skips, and a bunch of stuff like that, like, this raid is going to become a lot easier once we get used to it a bit more. Another thing is that, like, there have been big meta changes. I know, like, you probably overall want to still use some of the same weapons, but there's a lot of new anointments. They nerfed the 300% anointment and stuff like that. Like, we need to min-max our builds. We need to figure out the mechanics. And yeah, so I kind of just wanted to mention that and kind of point that out real quick. Now, immediately before I talk about any more of my reactions, I'm going to point out a lot of positives and negatives, because I think there's a lot more positives about this raid than a lot of people are talking about right now. And some of the negatives that I'm going to mention, some of the complaints are legitimate for sure. So yeah, so first I want to go over some tips and tricks about how the mechanics work with the crystals, how to get through the different phases of the takedown and whatnot. So yeah, now when you first start the takedown, you're gonna get into that area with the red health enemies. They are kind of like the beasts from Necrotafeo. To get through that first area, you actually just have to kill everything. There's no puzzle, there's nothing to figure out. You actually just have to literally kill everything in that first area, and then you can click the button to open the door. Now next, which is actually playing in the background right now, I was streaming this earlier. So this is the second area with the crystals. Now, I went through this and I insta-died a bunch of times and I didn't know what was going on. Real quick, I want to shout out Lazy Data. I figured some of this stuff out on my own. But after talking to him, he clarified a lot of it for me. So definitely shout out to Lazy Data. I will be linking him down below, just so you guys, you know, go check out Lazy. He's pretty awesome. And yeah, so basically how these crystals work is you have to stand within that little square to charge them up. And if you notice, the mission, if you look at under my minimap, the mission says charge crystals before detonation. So if you do not charge the crystals, then they will explode. And so basically how these work is you have to be standing on the crystals. If you are standing on the crystals, they are charging. Now, if enemies run onto your crystals, they won't charge. So you have to kill every enemy or keep them away somehow. I recommend trying out quasars, weapons like the backburner and the plague bearer, who have singularities, to keep enemies out of that area, or just kill them super fast. Your choice. Now, one thing I want to note about the insta-death is when you are not standing on a crystal, like how there's 3 crystals at once. If nobody's standing on a crystal, they will start to power down, and when the crystals reach 0, that's when they explode. So if you, and they will actually glow red. So if you see a crystal glowing red and you notice it starting to get low, you need to book it. You need to run over to that crystal and stand on it to charge it up. And that's basically how the crystals work. So that's basically what's going on and why the insta-death is happening. And that is pretty much the mechanic behind the crystals. So hopefully that answered any questions for you guys. If you guys want more clarification, just ask in the comments down below. Now, the next thing is Anathema, which is the mini boss of this event, the guardian that creates the radiation bubbles. Basically, this is actually a pretty straightforward fight. All you have to do is damage the guardian, the enemy, whatever. And when they start to create the radiation bubbles, you want to jump away on the launch pads. Just get out of there. And basically, the longer the fight goes on, the more guardians appear and create those radiation bubbles. When there's guardians everywhere and radiation bubbles everywhere, you just have to use really good timing and use the platforms to try to jump away while the bubbles are expanding. So it really just takes timing and just try not to fall off. One thing I want to mention is the boosts that shoot you are only active while the radiation bubbles are going off. So I didn't realize that at one point, and I tried to boost away when there was no radiation bubble, and I jumped right off the map. So just be very careful. Just know that you can't jump on those platforms unless there's radiation bubbles, and just try to time it perfectly. Now, finally, and then the last raid boss, there's one thing I want to mention about the last raid boss. Basically, there is this one moment where, she creates these huge bubbles that explode and deal a bunch of damage. Basically, those diadem enemies with the heads that you have to shoot, you have to stand on. Okay, let's say the raid boss is this microphone. Okay, here, look. The diadem is over here, walking towards you because the diadems follow you. Basically, you want to position yourself opposite of the diadem. You want to get them to walk into the raid boss and then kill the diadem, and it'll explode on the raid boss. So that's actually how that part works. Otherwise, though, just get far away when they do that explosive attack. And that's just one thing I wanted to point out about the raid boss. That's the only confusing mechanic, I believe. Otherwise, it's actually a pretty straightforward fight. And yeah, one of my last tips is probably to bring a cut purse. The cut purse, like, these enemies are seriously tanky. You definitely want a cut purse. If you're playing co-op, keep in mind that cut purse will regenerate ammo for your allies. So if only one person has a cut purse on them, that's enough for everyone. So keep that in mind. And yeah, I think that is pretty much it for the tips and tricks. If you guys have any specific questions, ask in the comments down below. Now, I want to talk about my first reactions and my first thoughts about this raid, and kind of address some of the community complaints. Now, basically the first thing I want to talk about is this raid fully blew me away. The scale of it, the size of it, like, the next raid better live up to this hype, or else this raid is just going to be the best one forever. It's fine if it doesn't. The Maliwan Takedown was the funnest content in the game yesterday. And then when this raid came out, it is amazing. The scale of it, the size of it, the work they put into it is absolutely mind-blowing, absolutely stunning. I'm not saying it's perfect, because it's not, and there are some legitimate complaints that I'm going to talk about, but that's the first thing I want to say is, like, Gearbox, you did a great job. Now, one thing I want to point out, and kind of one of the complaints, is the enemy health scaling. It is very, very fun to play in co-op, and I actually kind of like the sponginess in co-op. When I was with my friends playing, I was having a really good time. I really don't recommend playing this raid solo right now, or at least if you do, at least if you do play solo, just know that it's going to be very difficult. It is possible solo. Multiple people have already completed it solo, including, like, gamma builds. I'm actually thinking about posting a gamma flak build that can do the raid solo, which is going to be really cool. And yeah, so the enemy health scaling should come down a little bit, in my opinion, especially for solo play, because it is a little bit too spongy right now, and you'll definitely need some form of ammo regen right now to really keep up with it. Now, next, I want to talk about how awesome it is that it requires team mechanics. When playing in 4-player, we originally just went in with kind of our solo builds. I just took my generic Swiss Army knife build. My friend took their fadeaway flak build. And then we had a Moze and a Mara. We had one of everyone. It was pretty cool. But quickly, we actually all went to respec. our flak player switched to Gamma, which was very helpful, especially with the Red Fang. I think Gamma is one of the best builds for this takedown. It was very noticeable. As soon as they switched to Gamma, it became like almost twice as easy, just because the enemies target the pet with the Red Fang. Having an Amara player on your team with ties that bind is very helpful, at least in the current state of how this raid is. And I actually think it's very awesome that they are kind of encouraging these team mechanics. Listen, I am a solo player. I never play with friends. I always prioritize my solo play, but I actually really like that they kind of encouraged me to use team mechanics, and I think it's very unique and very awesome. I actually think that is more of a pro rather than a con, and I think if they just lower the health scaling of the enemies, it'll be much more doable solo. One actual complaint I have is the dedicated loot drops. This is a very long raid. This is a hour-long raid. Maybe like a half hour is probably a speed run with a team. And I feel like you should get a dedicated loot drop. It should be guaranteed. The fact that it takes a half hour to an hour to complete this, and I can complete the Maliwan takedown in 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes generally. 6.5 minutes is my average time if I'm not trying super hard, but I'm playing with a really min-max build. And this raid seriously takes like 30 minutes to an hour. We need a guaranteed drop. If not multiple guaranteed drops. So that is one genuine complaint I have. And they really should talk about that. And they really need to fix that. One other thing I want to talk about is the bosses. The final raid boss is probably going to be, as of right now, it's probably the best raid boss that Gearbox has ever created in any Borderlands game. The mechanics of that fight is so amazing. It's so awesome. Honestly, I don't feel like the final raid boss is super challenging. But just the mechanics of the fight itself and how it teleports you is insane. And I love that they are coming up with these mechanics instead of immunity phases. One thing I loved about the cartel event is the mini boss immunity phase. They wouldn't just become immune, they would actually evolve. So that was a really cool alternative to immunity phases, and this raid did that very well. The final raid boss, when they go immune, it teleports you to a whole nother area with mobs you have to fight. So I really like, for boss immunity phases, if we have something to do. It doesn't feel good when a boss just sits there immune and you just have to wait. That doesn't feel good, and that is not in this raid, so thumbs up. Keep it up, please. Like, immunity phases suck unless they're done right, which they were done correctly in this raid. The mini boss, the Anathema, I have it written down. Anathema, the mini boss that creates the rad bubbles. Those immunity phases are interesting because you do just have to wait until that boss is unimmune, but you do have something to do. You have to escape from the rad bubbles, and I think that's a pretty good game loop, in my opinion. That's pretty good game design. I like it. I think it's pretty cool. And that boss is actually more difficult and more spongy than like a lot of other bosses in the game. So I am happy about that because I do want more raid bosses in this game. We only have 2 right now. Some standalone raid bosses would be great, but you know, it's whatever. So let's move on. The next thing I want to talk about is basically just, this is an awesome raid. I think it just needs tuned a little bit. I get it is very hard and the enemy health scaling is a little bit overtuned, but like I said, just give it some time. I actually almost guarantee Gearbox is going to lower the enemy health. I don't know exactly how much the enemies are overtuned, but you can, I think we can all agree they're way tougher than true takedown Maliwan enemies on scaled takedown. Maybe we'll have to hop in the game and test how much overtuned they are. But I think we can all agree they definitely feel a lot tankier. When it comes to the platforming and stuff, it is kind of annoying that some of the Guardians have all of these strong knockback attacks. It is slightly annoying. Some of the platforming doesn't feel super great, but overall, this feels like a real raid. The Malawan takedown just feels like really hard Slaughter Star or really hard Athenas. But this actually feels like a legitimate raid. I love it, and yeah, I want more. So that is pretty much it for this video. I gave you guys the tips and tricks. If you guys want clarification on something specific, obviously ask in the comments down below and I will answer. And those are my reactions from day one. Keep in mind, this is my day one reactions. A lot of this is going to change. Like I said, as soon as we min-max our builds for the new meta, and as soon as we figure out these mechanics exactly, this is going to be a lot easier. I guarantee Garwood's going to speedrun this in like 2 weeks from now. And of course, we're going to bring him on the channel and, you know, get some tips and tricks. Otherwise, though, keep in mind, team mechanics are very good. I think Gamma Burst with Red Fang is a very strong option for flat currently. Amara with Ties That Bind is very strong. Actually using Zane's Deterrence Field, I will probably update my Zane build again for the Guardian takedown. I was using the Deterrence Field. A lot of these Guardians are melee attackers, and the Deterrence Field can also help keep enemies away from the crystals. So I think you want to think about team mechanics, and I think you want to think about stuff like that. Anyways, guys, that is pretty much it for this video. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to the channel for more Borderlands 3 videos. Otherwise, comment down below what you think. I will read all the comments. I will respond. But that's going to be it for me. I'm going to end the video right there. I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out.